So Jennifer, we met a long time ago, and I thought maybe we'd start by you maybe telling everybody, how high were we when we met?
Oh,
and some of you are going,
I won't
what
go
kind
there.
of question is that? Do you remember how high we were?
We were 11,000 feet.
We were at 11,000 feet. Make sure you note that to your parents. Okay, where were we and when was it?
I actually don't remember the year, but it was in Yosemite backcountry, High Sierra camps.
It was. We were hiking across the High Sierra camps, and I just would like everybody in our audience to know, Jennifer was the first person ever to see drawn in the sand the beginnings of the lean startup when I was trying to explain it to anybody who would pass by, including these random people I didn't know. I was drawing it in the dirt with a stick. And in fact, it was you and your husband who, in fact, renamed it from market development to customer development. So we've known each other for a while, but you've had a really interesting career. You know, you were a teacher for 7 years, right? And then you came back to Stanford and got your MA in teacher and curriculum development.
Yep.
And then you went off and joined the Seed Fund for education. What was that connection? How does a MA end up as a venture capitalist?
Yeah. Well, so on just a note on where we met in Yosemite. I'm pretty certain that I wouldn't be doing this job today if we hadn't literally crossed paths. You're in the backcountry of Yosemite, and you were on your mules. He had his 2 daughters with him, and they were like, you guys literally were on mules.
Right.
And we were hiking in the backcountry.
Because people have called me an ass before, so that's, it was very appropriate.
And it was my first kind of real exposure to the concepts of customer development and entrepreneurship. So it really sparked something in me in that experience. But to your question about how I ended up here, yeah, a lot of people ask how does a teacher end up running a venture philanthropy fund? And I had taught for 7 years, loved teaching, but felt I had plateaued and really wasn't meeting the needs of my students very well. I was teaching U.S. history, and then my last year, I actually taught teachers differentiated instruction.
And for what age groups?
Middle school and high school.
Okay.
So I felt like I had plateaued a bit, decided to go to grad school, came to Stanford, got my master's in curriculum and teacher development, and I started hanging out a little bit at the business school, and I saw Kim Smith speak, and she was the founder of NewSchools Venture Fund, and she talked about this idea of hybrid teams, bringing educators together with MBAs and entrepreneurial people and people that had more of a business and technical background. And I was really taken with her vision of there's a place for me in this world of entrepreneurship. So begged her for a job. She hired me on as a part-time research assistant, and I worked there for, I've been there, this is my 9th year actually, and so so really kind of learned how to do this job by shadowing, basically like apprenticeship, shadowing the partners at the time. I had great mentors. And then 3 years ago, my friend and I, we actually launched this seed fund to formalize the structure of ed tech investing at NewSchools.
So let's back up. You've raised some really interesting questions. One is this idea of Kim Smith had, 9-10 years ago, or even further, that was something unique. I mean, what was the unique insight, and what were people doing before, and what changed after NewSchools Ventures showed?
Sure. So she had this. So she founded NewSchools with Brooke Byers, venture capitalist, and John Doerr, another venture capitalist. And they came together and they thought, can we bring the venture model into education? And can we bring the kind of rigor and discipline of investing in early stage entrepreneurs and support them? But the difference between our model and a traditional venture fund is that we prioritize impact. So we're looking for sustainable, scalable, strong businesses, companies, but we are above all else prioritizing impact. So that was the first difference.
So what does impact mean? Are you doing charter schools or software or teacher training?
We have this belief that there is sort of no silver bullet for education. So the answer is not charters or ed tech or teacher development, that it's really a complex system that requires entrepreneurial energy across all of these different sectors. So we do invest grant money to nonprofit charter schools. We have close to 400 charter schools in our portfolio.
Wow.
Yeah, and we invest in teacher training programs, and then I focus on education technology investing through the Seed Fund.
So really, so the idea of the fund covers all these ways to change education, and what you're focusing on is tech. Is that ed tech?
Exactly.
And so what's an ed tech?
So we started investing in ed tech. So NewSchools was founded 16 years ago, and we started. Our first investment was actually Great Schools, which is still around, a really great company. And we have always invested in ed tech. But we started about 3-4 years ago, we started seeing some kind of differences out there in the funding environment. There was a lot more angel investing, and our schools were absorbing technology like never before. So we thought the time is right. Let's formalize this fund now. We moved our headquarters our office to Palo Alto, and we started investing in seed stage ed tech. And I think ed tech is like a catch-all for this intersection of education and technology companies. And it can be companies that are focused on students, that are focused on teachers. Most of our investing actually is targeted at teachers.
And you said, though, that one of the goals of NewSchools was impact. Is that still true for the ed tech investing you make?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is it impact, or is it profit, or is it these 501c nonprofits? Or?
Yeah, so we're agnostic if it's nonprofit or for-profit.
Okay.
So NewSchools will say, what is the best way to get at the impact goals?
Wait a minute, you're a venture fund that would fund a nonprofit? I've sat on boards where I've decided they were nonprofits, but that was by accident, not on purpose. So you actually fund them on purpose?
We have some of those in our portfolio.
But at least you could say, oh, we meant you guys to be a nonprofit.
No, we actually have some for-profits that are closer to nonprofits.
But you can make that decision on day one as a fund that these are something that's worth funding in any case.
Yeah, and I think that's what's unique about this space is that we have amazing nonprofits in this space, Khan Academy, CK12, ReadWorks, that are strong, scalable, sustainable nonprofits, but we have them side by side, top-tier venture-backed ed tech companies that we co-invest with.
Wow.
So we are, again, it goes back to this idea that there's like no one single solution. It's a complex system that requires, we need hardware in the schools, but we also need software that teachers can use and that students can use, and these things work together. And we kind of see, that's what I think is really unique about NewSchools, is that we see this whole system, we touch all different parts of it, and we can see where the needs are. So our fund is really need-driven, thesis-driven. So we ask our teachers, we ask our school leaders, what's preventing you from, what's preventing your students from reaching high levels of student achievement? And then they will tell us, this is what we need. We need a better way for teachers to share lesson plans. We need a better way for teachers to be trained on the spot. And we will go out looking for those solutions.
So before we go through some of those solutions, which I want to hear about, you said something earlier that I thought was really interesting, is that the adoption of new technologies has accelerated in the last couple of years in schools. Is that true?
Absolutely,
and what's driving that? Or is it legislation? Is it iPads? Is it something? It's now time, or the students have more tech than the schools have? I mean,
yeah, there's quite a few factors. I think one is that I would say this ed tech revolution has been led by the teachers. And they are the ones adopting these solutions, bringing them into their classrooms and using them.
That's a big idea. Why do you think that is?
Well, 40% of U.S. teachers, there's 4 million U.S. teachers, are under the age of 30. So they're young. Wow. They've grown up with technology.
I see.
And this is the way, they're banking online, they're shopping online, they come to school, and they get, in most schools, this is what you get: your file cabinet, your textbook, and your paper grader. And they're saying, no way, we want technology tools that are as good as our consumer technology tools.
So that's a big change, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
teacher-driven, because the outside world for them is computerized, and they're
Yes.
going back into something that looks like the Little House on the Prairie schoolhouse, right? Is that?
Yeah.
And what else? Any impact of legislation or No Child Left Behind, or is that all orthogonal to what's driving?
No, it's not. It's, what, actually, this is, so 3 years ago when we started this fund, what was really a driver of the change was the budget cuts, actually. And the severity of the budget cuts, and they were faced with, one of our schools that we funded, KIPP LA, do we not open the school, or do we open it with more technology and a greater student-teacher ratio? So that's been one driver of getting the technology into the schools. And then there is a lot more devices, right? Like there's 9 million iPads in U.S. K-12 schools.
Whoa.
We have 2,000 schools are one-to-one now, and we expect that number to be close to 100% of schools to be one-to-one.
What does that mean?
Sorry, I fall into the education lingo. 1 device per child.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. You mean they assign somebody an iPad?
Yeah, so when you register with school, you get your textbook, you get your iPad, you get your...
And who pays for those devices?
It varies. So sometimes the schools pay, sometimes the parents pay. Some of the funding for this is being covered by Title I funding for low-income schools.
Wow, that's really interesting. And have the entrepreneurs changed in the 16 years, or are they the same? Their motivations, or their technology, or their goals, or are they the same that you've seen?
Yeah, thankfully they've changed a lot.
Yeah.
So, I think that technology used to come into schools. Innovation came, with in a car. So the salesperson would drive up and have some CD-ROMs and show the IT specialist. There's Oregon Trail or whatever the software was, and the IT specialist would purchase that technology often without talking to teachers and without having any data on the efficacy of this product. And then they would roll it out to the teachers, kind of, top down, force teachers to use it. And that's the way technology was what came to our schools in the 90s. But now, thankfully, the way it's happening is that these teachers are adopting the technology into their classroom. They're using it. They're understanding how it works with their students. They're getting efficacy data, doing kind of mini research in their own classrooms, and then they will kind of pitch their school leader to purchase the software license.
Wow, that's a
huge.
real shift.
It's huge.
It's like the difference between PCs entering the corporation versus mainframes being controlled by a single department and a CIO.
Yeah, same ideas like consumerization of IT, right? Like,
that's a great insight. But have the entrepreneurs themselves changed? I mean, do they all have the same vision that they had in the 90s, or are they more savvy, less savvy, same problems, different problems?
So yeah, you saw 2 of them up there. I mean, I'm biased, of course, but I think they're amazing. Like these entrepreneurs we have more entrepreneurs coming from engineering and from the consumer tech sector coming into education. So the first guy that you saw...
Wait a minute, you don't stop them at the door and send them away? So if there's some entrepreneurs, you'll let them actually go pitch you?
No, we welcome them with open arms. We love them in education, love them. So the Krishna, he has students now, or he has children that are in school, and he wanted his kids to be able to learn coding, computer science early on. So that's why he had built Tinker, but he had 2 successful companies in consumer tech prior.
And he then decided to go into edtech because he had kids.
Yeah.
Is that
It's
sometimes
common.
a motivation for?
Absolutely, yeah. And roughly across our portfolio, we have 46 edtech companies in our portfolio, and 45% of them have been founded by teachers.
Interesting. So tell me about the portfolio, and tell me about the types of deals you see. And in fact, let me ask the canonical question. How many deals do you look at or get pitched or get thrown over the transom a week?
Yeah, so
in edtech?
I think we're really lucky because NewSchools has been around for 16 years and has a name and presence in the space. So we get 20 to 30 companies coming in our pipeline per week.
A week.
A
That's
week,
about
yeah.
1,000 to 1,500 a year.
Yeah.
Do you read them all?
No, not anymore. I used to.
So give me the characteristic for anybody watching or here. What is kind of a good first order pass for an ed tech deal to be looked at for you and New Schools?
So like the space or
Both the space and the entrepreneur, and how do they, then we'll ask, what's your email address so they could email you personally, but no, we
My
won't do
email's
that.
on LinkedIn. It is open. It's out there.
But first of all, the space, what do you currently look at? How do you
Sure.
kind of sort through these 1,000 to 1,500 as a venture capitalist, but a venture capitalist in a very specialized niche?
Yeah.
What should people who be watching or listening think about when they're thinking about pitching a deal?
Sure. So we focus on K-12 first. So education market covers kind of pre-K through higher ed. We focus on K-12. And then we're thesis driven. So we've identified some of these problems, which I mentioned earlier.
What are they again?
Yeah, so these are problems mostly identified by our schools that we are investing around. But I also want to say that we are not dogmatic about following our investment areas, because I'm continually surprised by the entrepreneurs that come through our doors
Right.
and show us what they are doing with technology. And that is, so we're open to breakthrough innovations that entrepreneurs bring us.
But what are the theses?
Okay, so the thesis are, I think first is that we focus on underserved populations. So we are looking at companies that are going to service special education students, English language learning students, first generation college going students. So these are areas that have been terribly underserved in the past. So the tools that teachers have in these areas, which are heavily compliance driven, are just terrible. So we are looking for innovation in those sectors.
Give us some examples. Just
Okay, so our
each thesis.
first investment out of the seed fund was a company called Goldbook. And this guy is amazing, Daniel Yu. And he was a Oracle coder, developer. And then he became a special education teacher in Ravenswood. So he had this really unique mix of engineer and teacher. And so he had coded up a solution for teachers to create individualized education plan goals for their students. So if you are a special education child, you have these IEP goals. And they're
Which means what?
Which are goals that the teachers and the parents and all the people that are supporting that child are working towards. So everyone's on the same page.
He automated the process.
Exactly. So he automated that process, but he also brought great research into it. So he infused this research coming out of Boston into the goal making.
So that's an example. One thesis: the special education underserved community. Next thesis.
So another thesis is tools to help teachers differentiate learning.
What does that mean? Boy, that sounds like an education phrase.
Yeah. So differentiation is actually the #1 topic of professional development requested by teachers and has been since the early 90s. So basically the idea is that our school system is one size fits all. That we are in a mass production school system. We kind of batch kids through our school system, which worked really well when we were preparing kids for factories during the industrial age. But now we have demands of a very high skilled economy, and that does not work anymore. So the idea is we're moving closer to personalized learning, and differentiation is a set of strategies that a teacher would use to help personalize instruction for children.
So instead of breaking them in separate classes, it's how does one teacher actually personalize the content for a mixed class of mixed learners?
So I'll just give you a real quick example on that one. There's a company we funded called Newsella. And they bring current events into the classroom. So they have partnerships with like New York Times and Washington Post, and they bring great journalism into the classroom, but they level it 5 different Lexile reading levels for students.
You lost me. They do what?
So they level the article. So there's an article that you're getting from New York Times.
They kind of rank the complexity of the article?
Exactly.
Right.
So
Okay.
there's actually a standard Lexile, it's called.
Okay.
And you can level any text for different reading abilities.
I see.
So the idea is that all students in the class can engage in the same article, whereas before, they would split kids up, and then you'd have, names like, this is the Bluebird group, and they're reading like really interesting text, and then you have the buzzards that are reading, See Spot Run because they're struggling readers. Right. And it's very stigmatizing to kids.
Got it.
And the idea now is that you can engage in the same article and then they can have a discussion around it.
So that's another thesis.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So
okay.
that's a differentiating instruction. Then we're really focused on STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. So we're trying to build the STEM pipeline.
For K through 12?
Yeah.
And examples?
Tinker was one of them. Coding. We have 3 coding companies in our portfolio. Tinker, CodeHS, and CodeNow, which is a nonprofit.
Got it. Another thesis, or is that those
so then we have underserved STEM. We do a lot of digital, big data. Big data is actually a really important one. So this is basically tools that extract data from student learning and provide a really nice visual dashboard for teachers or decision makers that are making decisions about a child's placement or even like what they're going to learn tomorrow. And we have 4 or 5 companies in that portfolio.
So this is decision management for administrators and teachers.
Exactly.
To be more effective about utilization of teaching resources. And,
yeah.
Okay. Got it. And so with those kind of the general, so how many companies a year do you fund? So
we fund 12 to 14 companies.
Let's see, let me do the math. That's about 100 to 1.
Yeah.
Right? So for every 100 plans you see, you fund 1.
Yeah.
All right. So I see somebody in the back writing up 100 plans right now. Right. So and what's the filter? How do you kind of decide? I mean, how do they get? Is it personal introductions, or what's the best way for your fund to connect to an entrepreneur?
So there's easy ways to reach anyone at NewSchools. We do have, my email is on LinkedIn and available, and people do email us directly. I get at least 1 or 2 per day from entrepreneurs.
Do you ever fund any of those?
We have funded 1.
One.
We have funded 1 of them.
So what's the more effective way, other than spam you?
It was a really awesome company, Bright Bites, and the MIT guys.
So you never knew them before? It was a cold email?
It was just cold email.
So 1 out of a couple hundred. All right. Yeah. But what's the other way that they should get a hold of your fund?
So usually they come in through warm introduction, through so entrepreneurs are a great pipeline of referrals of companies.
So they should be spamming your portfolio, right?
That is
right, for an intro. Is that what you're suggesting? Is they should be meeting the CEO?
That is one way, yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so, but that's just a natural way that venture capitalists tend to filter.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that different, I guess, than,
right?
than
it's
other
that
venture capital.
If someone vouches for someone that says this is an interesting company, or this is a great entrepreneur,
you listen up. Yeah, exactly. I mean, we really do try to be open because we believe that, especially in education, some of these great ideas are coming from teachers that are toiling away in their classrooms and building solutions. Yeah. And they may not be connected to anyone in Silicon Valley. So we want to find them too.
Right. So the standard model for certainly here at Stanford, and if somebody's watching online or listening to the podcast, is everything needs to be $1 billion company. Is that the goal of these ed tech companies? Do they need to come in and prove to you that they're going to get 20 million students in year 1, and then, or is there a different model for what you fund?
No, they don't. So because we prioritize impact, we're
so,
not looking for.
So say that part again.
Because we prioritize impact.
Big deal. So you're not looking for the little graph that looks exponential like Facebook, though you wouldn't throw them out, right?
Right. Because there's some, there's a reason why that data is going up and to the right, and so we want to understand why. But I actually looked this up just today, that there's been 11 ed tech companies since, I think it was 1998, that are considered like ed tech unicorns, $1 billion valuations.
But that's not what you're looking for.
It's a small number, yeah.
And so what do you look for when they talk about scale and business or whatever? So besides a great idea and you think it's interesting, what are the other things you're kind of filtering on?
Yeah, I think that this is one of the things that we have gotten. We make a lot of mistakes too. I should say that I don't feel like I have some magic see into the future that all these companies are going to be successful. Because
you sure you're a venture capitalist?
I mean, we are coming in at the earliest stages when these ideas are raw. Like many times, they are just a feature. They're an idea.
Because it's a seed fund.
Yeah, because we're at the top of the funnel. It's a seed fund. So we're doing a lot. So I think like the most important thing that we're looking for is authenticity. So is this person authentically driven to solve a problem? And that authenticity could look lots of different ways, right? Like it could be a teacher that was like Daniel, that was, faced a problem in his classroom, and so he built a solution for it. We have a great company called No Red Ink. This teacher in Chicago, actually, he was at a Chicago public high school, and he was tired of grading papers, and so he found a developer on Craigslist, and he actually created this solution, No Red Ink. So he was very authentic. Like, here's a guy that's just like driven to solve a problem. So we are looking for what is driving them to start this company. Is it authentic? And then we're looking for courage too. Like starting a company is, as you know, Steve, intimately, that it takes a lot of courage and
or stupidity, one of the two, right?
Yeah, we're looking for the courage side of that spectrum. So
I never would have gotten funded. and so courage, authenticity, and then impact on the specific theme.
Yeah, kind of aligned to one of those themes.
And
that
do you
we're
give them
focused
some
on.
examples? Is there stuff on your website they should look at, or?
We have a link to steveblank.com that we
I was thinking about, is there a list of your portfolio companies up there?
Yeah.
Right. And so what mistakes do the people you fund in EdTech, not just the ones to get into you, but the ones that actually are funded, do you see some common mistakes of entrepreneurs?
Yeah, we do. This is an interesting one because I think it's two sides of the same coin. We see companies that don't think of themselves as technology companies. So they think of themselves as an education company. They have a lot of great former teachers that are starting this company. But then I say, where's your tech team? Where's your developers? And they say, we outsourced that to wherever, and we built our product, and now we're going to sell it. And that is sort of a red flag to us because that harkens back to the technology of EdTech of the 90s, where they build this product and then they just blow up this huge sales force and just go sell it to schools. And then the
and
product.
What's wrong with that?
Well, the product wouldn't have literally would go 10 years and not be changed and not be improved, and they can't respond to user needs. They're not getting out of the building and talking to their teachers.
So you want to see a whole team, both.
So I want to see a hybrid team of educators and technologists.
Great.
Yeah.
What other mistakes do you see in EdTech?
Yeah. So on the flip side of that is sometimes we see heavy technology teams that don't have any educators in the leadership team, and I see those are problematic too, because I think it is really beneficial to have somebody that understands schools and education deeply to be helping guide the company. And then I'd say maybe one other big mistake companies make is that because there's so many teachers adopting these products and they are the ones that are really driving the traction, that they build this product for the teacher, but then forget that the payer is the administrator, and that there's a whole different set of processes and needs that administrators have. So
that's interesting. So you mean they kind of confused that there might be a multi-sided market and dealing with users and payers, right? And that they might actually know that the users are passionate, but they might as well be a nonprofit because the payers don't care. Is that?
Yeah, I would characterize it like that. Yeah, there's a lot of companies that have figured this out and have done a really amazing job of capitalizing on this user base,
right,
and actually using these teachers to kind of upsell to principals and administrators. I think Wikispaces has done a really good job.
But is your point that should be a strategy, not an accident?
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. And without naming names, are there some spectacular failures that you now kind of think back to? And I don't, know if everybody likes to bury their dead and leave them dead, but that you wish you knew, what you now know about. I should have seen these happen, and that are kind of education specific.
Yeah, there's definitely. I've got some of those in our I was gonna say in our portfolio, but there's one that I think that really frustrates me that we invest in this company because this is one of those, like I mentioned, like you learn this job by doing. You learn it by making mistakes, and you learn it by seeing lots of companies and by actually doing the work. And this one company that we invested in, this is early on, the cap table, I sort of didn't look at closely enough.
Cap table is?
The capitalization table that basically says who owns the company,
Okay.
how the shares are divided. And what I didn't realize is that the founder, his share of the company was actually like super small. And he'd come out of this incubator, this accelerator, that owned most of the equity of the company. So he basically felt like, hired help to run this company. And it played out that way, so.
So what would you do different now, or what do you do different?
I look very closely at the cap table.
Okay.
I try to understand who all those people are and cousins and uncles on the cap table, and then I think it goes back to like data, like pattern recognition, and you get better at looking for that authenticity in.
So
in the
you want the
entrepreneur.
founder engaged and the
Like
ability
this
to.
has got to be he or she. They're going to create this company with or without us, no matter what. They feel strong conviction for this company. So that's what, it's one of the most important things that we look for.
Good. And any other lessons that were expensive or interesting?
They're ongoing, so many. I think there's another one that I learned that is, that I sort of projected my vision for a company onto this company. And I was so excited about this vision, and it was really like, when I think about it, it was my vision. It was not this founder's vision. And so we just sort of there was a lot of friction there.
Interesting.
In the direction the company should go.
And let me just kind of close this with trying to understand the context of your fund in the funding ecosystem. You're a seed fund, right? And that implies what for additional funding? Where do you fit, and what happens in a successful path for it?
Yeah, so we're a very active ed tech seed fund. So we were the number one most active ed tech funder the last 2 years.
So what does seed mean?
So generally it means first money in. Sometimes it's after an accelerator, an incubator. So we are pre-Series A investor.
And is that like $5,000 or $500,000?
So our ticket size is usually like 150 to 200,000.
Ticket size, is that VC speak for something? Is that?
Yeah, investment.
Investment is how much?
150 to 200,000.
Great. So that is a seed round, enough to get you started. And what do you expect them to do with that money?
We co-invest with other angels.
I see. So how much is the total?
So this is interesting. So when we first started the seed fund, average seed rounds were about 750 in ed tech, and now they're about 1.5 million.
And what do you expect a startup to do with a $1.5 million seed round?
So our companies, we bucket them into three categories, and one is you're going to get to sustainability on your seed round alone.
Wow.
So Goldbook is a company that achieved profitability on $1 million.
So sustainability means make more money than you're spending. Is that,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's bucket one.
Second bucket would be you're a good candidate for foundation or other type of impact financing for follow-on. So you're not VC profile, but there may be impact investors.
Like Gates or
Gates
Foundation?
Dell Foundation.
Got it.
There's a lot of angel investors that are
Interested in impact.
Yeah.
And then the third?
And then third is you're getting ready for a VC round of financing.
And VCs are actually interested in this space?
Yeah, very, very much so. So last year there was $452 million invested in K-12 ed tech.
In one company?
Across
this
a number of different companies. But yeah, there's like Bessemer is in, Kleiner Perkins. We've co-invested with Excel is in 2 of our companies. So yeah, there's quite a few.
Great. And so they go then down the traditional venture path?
Yes.
How interesting.
Yeah.
And so what would you tell entrepreneurs who are interested in ed tech today? What should they do? Or why should anybody be interested in ed tech? Those who haven't even given much thought about this area.
Yeah, I think that this is such an important sector, such an important area, as all of us, sitting here at Stanford know, that we have our education system is really suffering right now, especially for the low-income students. So in our country, that if your parents did not graduate from high school, then the chances are that you will get to college and get through college are about 5%. And in other industrialized countries, that's 23%. So education, which used to be this amazing escalator of opportunity for people in the United States, is especially those in lower income people, it's not the case anymore. And there's lots of stats that I can tell you around that, but I think it's ripe for innovation, and the time is now to be building ed tech companies.
So is the way to think about this is if there's more to life than 140 characters, you should be thinking about giving back in ed tech?
Yes.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with social media, but this actually affects people's lives a little differently than other things you could be doing with your time. And by the way, you mentioned U.S. Is that where your funding is? Is the focus on just U.S. ed tech companies?
We're being drawn more and more outside the U.S., but we've invested in 2 Canadian companies, and we are across the portfolio. About 15% of users that are using the the products, are outside of the U.S.
Will you look at deals outside the U.S.?
Yes, definitely.
Oh,
definitely,
interesting.
Yeah.
And so you seem to be committed to this. Is that?
Yeah.
And why? Personally.
Yeah.
I mean, you now have enough, points in the game to kind of go to any venture fund. Why are you doing this one?
I think if I were to sort of play armchair psychologist with myself and think, why am I drawn to this space? I think it goes back to, I grew up outside of Chicago, and I grew up in a suburb, Glen Ellen, and it was a western suburb and very middle-class community. And my sophomore year, we moved into the city, and I went to Chicago Public High School. And it was just vastly different experience in the quality of education.
Better or worse?
A lot worse. So long-term subs, just the teachers were not high quality. Just the opportunity that was offered to the kids is not the same. So we moved back the following year into the suburbs, but I consider that year like a real gift in my life, and in understanding that opportunity is so important for people. And schools, our education institutions, are incredibly important to make that opportunity happen. So I think human potential is everywhere. It's not just in Palo Alto and Silicon Valley, and we need to make sure that we have schools that can really tap into people's potential. So
it sounds like you're on a mission.
You could say that.
So is there anything I should have asked you? What question do you wish I would have asked?
No, we can maybe open it up to
We
see
will,
what
but
they want.
no, you're blushing already, so there must be a question. You're either happy I didn't ask, or you wish I did.
I think maybe this path may sound like it's been easy. I kind of was a teacher, and then I popped in to see Kim Smith, and then I went to NewSchools, and now I'm investing in education. But it's been a steep and long learning curve for me. And when I came into NewSchools, I was a researcher, and I didn't have an MBA. And I was surrounded by these Harvard and Stanford MBAs who would talk about leverage and value proposition and level 5 leadership and all of this fancy MBA talk, and I was so intimidated by it.
They didn't know what it meant either, so don't worry.
But now I
use
that. I'll drop leverage a couple times a day now. A couple more times this talk. So I think that I did feel when I first started at NewSchools, this is my 9th year, very intimidated by that. And I guess if I could give, as you guys don't need advice, usually, but if I could offer something that I took away from this experience is that to value what you bring to the table and value your skills and what your experience and what you have done, because I feel like I undervalued my education experience. I was the only teacher at NewSchools at the time that had taught more than 2 years. That was a non-TFA teacher, and I feel like I didn't value that enough in myself.
And it turns out you were the only one who actually knew anything in the building. So I think that is a great way to kind of end the conversation. But I want to thank you for your time, and I learned a lot. And so thank you, Jennifer.
Thanks.
So do you want to take some questions from the audience?
Sure.
Questions? Yeah. Do we have a mic, or we're going to just do this? If you could repeat the question.
In working in the field, how have you seen companies looking towards making their product have a large impact because technology is so expensive? Have there been any innovative ways that they've looked towards getting this across a wide breadth of people in schools that don't have the private school or charter school funding?
Yeah.
Can you repeat the question?
Okay, the question was, how can you grow your company inexpensively? Is that right? Well, so now things have changed, and there's great ways, there's distribution channels into schools. So we have the App Store, which teachers use on the iPads. There's 9 million iPads in our schools. We have the Google Chromebooks, the Google Play for Education store. There's Edmodo App Store. So I think that is a good first line of getting your app out there and seeing, getting your feedback and growing from there. I mean, I'm amazed actually at some of these companies. They put their app up there and they grow. Like Class Dojo is a fantastic company. Class Dojo spent $0 on marketing and grew to 45 million students.
Just through the App Store?
Yeah, and having they have a blog and they have some social media presence, but mainly through these things.
Without
word of
salespeople
mouth.
driving
The other
around
thing is
with-
that teachers, word of mouth, teachers love to tell each other about great products, and they will. And so there's a natural virality in education.
Okay, thank you.
Right there.
Do you find any mental health or emotional health companies related to students?
The question is social emotional learning or social emotional health?
Mental health, emotional health, social emotional learning.
Yeah, we're looking into that more and more, actually. We're doing diligence on a company right now in that space. So I think it's really important, and we know that those qualities are predictive of student success in lots of different ways. So yeah, there's more and more companies out there in the space.
Okay, next. Yes.
How do you justify to your clients investing in nonprofits? And also, can you give us some examples of ways to measure your impact?
Sure. So the question is, how do we justify nonprofits, investment in nonprofits? Yeah, it's a good question. So we have invested or granted money, I should say, out of this seed fund to 6 nonprofits, and because we do not provide returns back to our limited partners. So the money that comes into us to invest is a philanthropic capital. It's donations. So
you use the profits to kind of evergreen the fund, meaning
exactly.
reinvest in more companies?
Exactly. So we've had several exits, some recently, N-Grade, we had this year, Wireless Generation, Carnegie Learning, Blend Space, and profits from those returns are recycled back into the fund, which we then happily invest in other entrepreneurs. But
Okay.
You had a second question? Oh, how do we measure impact? Lots of different ways. So we collect metrics from our companies every quarter, and we care about retention. Retention is very important for us. Our teachers using these products. We measure net promoter scores of the products. We look at student achievement gains when we can.
Okay. Next question. Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, I just wonder, do you ever take input from different education models in different countries around the world?
Question.
Yeah, so the question is, do we look at other education models in other parts of the world and take that into account when we're thinking about our investments?
No, in general, do you compare?
So yeah, I was in China 2 years ago visiting the schools in Chengdu. So we should do more of it, but we do look at other models, and we certainly look at the international rankings of schools, student achievement across the countries.
Okay. Other questions? How come this side of the room hasn't asked anything? Are you guys like all in detention in school, or there we go. All right, this is kind of close to that side. Yes.
What sort of things would you like to see, assuming you had like any power in Congress, in terms of education reform, based on your own experiences?
Yeah, that's a good question.
What was the question?
The question is, if we had endless bank account to change education or to reform education, what would we do? I think I would want to move us away from this system that is based on essentially seat time. So you kind of move through the system grade by grade and move it to a mastery-based system so that it's based on you mastering different concepts and you're moving more fluidly through the system. I think it's this system that we have right now based on seat time is very constraining to schools.
Does anybody run that
students.
experiment?
Yeah, there are schools that are doing mastery-based learning.
Where you could spend variable time in the school?
Well, you kind of work through a set of objectives at
Right.
your own pace, right?
And so if you finish it fast, you're out, and if you're not that fast, you're still there?
Yeah, I'm not sure what happens when you finish all of the objectives if you're actually out, but there's schools in Alaska that I know they're doing a lot of work on that front, and there's lots of schools around here too that are more tech-enabled. I think that's a big one. And just the way that teachers are trained and the way that teachers are, like I went to the School of Education, and if you go into that Cubberley Library, you see that all of these like research journals, hundreds of research journals, which essentially hold all the secrets to how we best teach kids. And those are inaccessible to teachers that are in the classrooms teaching students. It's just ridiculous in this day and age of technology that teachers are not given access to the latest research on how best to teach students.
Sounds like a startup in there.
Yes.
Right?
We'll fund that.
You can fund that one right there. Anybody else? Yes, right there.
So I was just curious, what exactly are your firm's specific goals? Because you talked about mastery education, and I was curious, what else would you like to see? What end goals do you want to see achieved in the student United States education system?
Yeah. So there's.
So the goals are?
So he was asking what are our firm's goals? What are NewSchools' goals? Our mission is to transform public education through passionate ideas. Powerful ideas and passionate entrepreneurs, especially for the most underserved kids. And so we are really focused on this achievement gap, which has gotten worse and worse over time. So since the 1960s, there has been the gap between affluent and poor students has grown by 40 points. And now it is double that of the achievement gap between black and white.
Wait a minute, say that last part again. So class is now more important than race?
Absolutely.
In
And
U.S. educational attainment? Really?
Yes, and the research has been done by
you
Sean.
all ought to think about that for a second. That's a big piece of data.
And the research has been done by professor at Stanford, Sean Reardon. And yeah, it is more of a predictor now.
That class is more important than race in educational success.
Predictor of educational success is
Which also is a predictor of income.
Yes.
Wow.
And what is scary is that now 48% of students in our nation's public schools are eligible for free and reduced lunch. So almost half of our kids, and it's majority in some areas of the South, are eligible for free and reduced lunch, which is a proxy for low income.
Wow.
Yeah.
Those race and class are not necessarily mutually exclusive, so I mean,
That's right,
one
yeah.
can define the other one. So does that piece of information tell you anything?
Yeah, I mean, you can see that. So there's a great piece in the New York Times about this actually that talks about, has a bunch of graphs. Was race and income are not mutually exclusive? Right. Yes, but they're not completely overlapping either.
Right. That's the surprise. Other questions? So that's like, you get to ask two because you're representing the entire side of that auditorium.
Yeah, just building on what you mentioned about goals, would you be supportive of goals that, such as like online education replacing physicality in schools altogether? Would you be supportive, or would you endorse those goals like, I complete my entire high school requirements online or my university requirements online and save on so much money building physical schools, maintaining them? Would you be supportive of those goals?
Yeah, it's a good question.
The
Question is, would we be supportive of
Virtual schools.
100%, 100% online education, virtual schools? So it's an area that we're looking into quite a bit now because it's the fastest growing subpopulation of schools in the US now. And it's growing the best research that I have tapped into is 11% it grew last year. And it's growing almost twice as fast as charter schools. So it is a very important sector to think about. We have not made many investments in that, any investments actually in that space. We have made investments in blended learning models that are still focused on teachers being the coordinator of learning in the classroom. But there are a lot of, just to be honest here, there's a lot of bad providers in that virtual learning space. K12.com is one of them. It's a $1 billion company. And we would love to see some disruption of the dominant players in that space.
And why are they not optimal?
Their results are bad. Their results around helping students learn, when you look at student achievement results, are
Then
not
why,
good.
why are they dominant?
I think that they are the market leader, and there's so few alternatives right now, and kids are opting out of the traditional school system and are going totally online.
So it sounds like you're asking for some business plans in this area.
Yeah.
Right? And that would be looked at kindly if people were pitching you those ideas.
It's a hard space to get into because you have to create a very comprehensive product. It's not like some of the other products that you can kind of wedge into with a little product, a little MVP. Like, you actually really need a comprehensive soup to nuts product that you're providing, and that's difficult to create. It's hard.
So we have time for one or two best questions. Okay, all the way in the back. No, that's you.
After
No, don't defer to the guy. Yeah, smack him. He interrupted you. Unless you're related to him. Then,
We work together.
all right. Then smack him twice.
After you make the investment in the company, what does your relationship with them look like? How long do they remain in the portfolio? How do you continue to support the founders, et cetera?
Yeah, that is a good question. The question is, once we make the investment, how do we support these companies? So we believe that we have a hands-on role with these companies after we've invested in them. And so they're seed companies, so they don't necessarily have a board. Most of them don't have a board. I am on 7 boards, though, of companies that have now grown up and have raised their Series A and invited me to the board. So we have a set of supports that we provide. Actually, our director of portfolio supports is here. She's in the back, Eva. And we have some kind of scalable supports. So we have great strategic partnerships with Google and Apple and Edmodo that we're able to support our companies through. There's a lot of kind of inter-portfolio convenings that we do. We bring our portfolio together. They share best practices with each other. We do a lot of I'm constantly texting and talking with our companies on different problems that they're having. So we support them in very kind of traditional ways that a seed fund would. But I think that we bring an education lens, and we have a great network in the education space, and we have almost 400 schools that we are close to.
And I've seen this. It's an amazing interaction support.
Yeah, we held it at Steve's
Who has a
house.
quick best question? Okay, quick best question. Right there.
So in the last few years, there's been a lot of concern about the costs of technology in terms of shortened attention spans and distractibility. There's actually an interesting...
Quick. What's the question? Not the lecture. What's the question?
In the New New York Times that.
Well, what's the question? Seriously, we're running out of time. What's the question?
What's your opinion on the downside of technology?
Right.
Particularly in light of like all school children being issued iPads.
Okay, so question was like, what are the downsides of tech? So we have focused our investing on schools, institutions, and really focused on teachers. So we haven't I don't mean to dodge the question, but we haven't really had to deal with the very earliest ages, 0 through 5, of children using technology. And there's definitely there's more and more research out there. There's recommendations from the American Pediatric Association about screen time and things like that. But I have 3 kids of my own, and I can tell you that this is really hard. Like, we vacillate between giving our kids iPads so we can get something done to to like banning technology for months on end. I think we really got to get better at figuring out what is the balance of the technology in the classroom.
So Jennifer, thank you very much, and
Thank you.
thanks for your time.